Welcome to Priority Standard 16.3, which is going over surface area of a cube, and it's going to go over some other aspects of surface area. So our learning target today is I can find the surface area of any cube, knowing only the edge length of the cube. And we're going to practice some things like that. So hopefully you did the warm-up as a class. If you didn't, make sure you do it. Make sure your learning target is filled in for that part of the lesson, because that's very important. So I can find the surface area of any cube. Surface area. Okay. So activity number 1. We're going to start off. It says a cube has an edge length of 3 units. So remember, a cube is like think of a Rubik's cube or a box. It's all of the faces are a square. And we know how to find the area of a square nice and easy. There are 6 faces to it. So we know there's just really 6 squares about it. So a cube has an edge length of 3 units. Answer the following questions about the cube. What is the area of one of the faces on the cube? So one of the faces, I'll do it in red. So that's just like one square. That is 3 by 3. You could count each of these like unit squares, or you could just do 3 times 3. 3 times 3, which is 9. So each square is 9 square units. Okay. How many faces are on the cube? So a cube is made up of 6 faces, just like a rectangular prism, meaning there are 6 squares. And the nice thing about the area or the surface area of a cube is all of the faces have the same area. They all, in this case, have an area of 9. So what is the surface area of the cube? We're just going to take the area of one face, 9, and we're going to multiply it by 6, because all 6 of the faces, this area is 9, this area is 9, this area is 9, and there's 6 faces, even though we only can see 3. 9 times 6 is 54, so the surface area is 54 square units. So that is the surface area of a cube. You can find it very quickly, find the area of one face, and then multiply it by 6. Now the question 4 moves to a kind of different idea. It says how many snap cubes are used to build the 3 by 3 by 3 cube? So how many snap cubes? This is really talking about volume. Okay, so that would mean I have 3 cubes by 3 cubes by 3 cubes. I know 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 27. So really 27 snap cubes make it. This is like the volume. This is thinking 3-dimensionally. This isn't talking about surface area. And then question 5 says, what is the volume of the cube? Volume is length times width times height, or base times height times width. So multiplying the 3 dimensions, which is what we just did to find out how many snap cubes. So for cubic units, it's also 27. So circle these and say this is volume. These questions here, 1 through 3, we're talking about surface area. And remember, surface area or area is squared, and volume is cubed. So that's the difference. Moving on to activity number 2. So activity number 2, before we begin, let's look at this. So this is talking about exponents. This isn't on your paper, but just try to review. Have you seen 10 to the 3rd power before? So 10 to the 3rd power, this is an exponent. So 10 to the 3rd power means 3 10s multiplied together. 10 times 10 times 10. In this case, 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. So an exponent is how many times do we multiply the base by itself. So let's practice when we are talking about finding surface area and things. So question 1 says a square, so it's a square, so we know both sides are the same. A square has a side length of 10 centimeters. Use an exponent to express its area. So we know if we have a square and one side is 10, that means the other side is also 10. So in other words, we are doing 10 times 10, or 2 10s multiplied together. So in this case, the area, we could say, it technically is 100, but if I'm writing an exponent for my answer, I could say it's 10 to the 2nd power, because I'm multiplying 10 2 times. So I'll say 10 to the 2nd power centimeters squared. But this is how you write it with an exponent. Number 2 says the area of a square is 36 square inches. What is its side length? So in this case, the area is 36. So we have to think what times what equals 36. So this is 1 times 1 doesn't, 2 times 2 equals 4, 3 times 3 equals 9. I know 6 times 6 equals 36. So the side length would be 6 inches. And it's not 6 inches squared, it's just 6 inches because it's just the side length. It's not the area. The next one says the area of a square is 81 meters squared. Use an exponent to express this area. So the area of a square, so we want to write it as exponent. So if I say the area of this is 81, I have to think what times what equals 81. So I know 6 times 6 is 36, so it's not 6. 7 times 7 is 49. 8 times 8 is 64. 9 times 9 is 81. So I know the side length is 9. So if I'm writing the area, so if I'm trying to write 9 times 9 as an exponent, that's 2 9s together, so 9 to the second power. So I could write it as 9 to the second power. That's the same as the area. 81 equals 9 to the second power, or 9 to the second power equals 81. So that's how we would write that one. Number 4. A cube has an edge length of 4 inches. Use an exponent to express its volume. So we know if a cube, one of the sides is 4, that means the other side is 4, and the other side is 4. So really, to find the volume, we multiply the 3 dimensions, 4 times 4 times 4, which is the same as 4 to the third power. We don't even need to solve. We just write it as 4 to the third power. Technically, we write it as inches cubed, but you can just write 4 to the third power. Number 5. The volume of a cube is 8 centimeters cubed. What is its edge length? So if the volume, we know the volume is base times width times height. And this is going to equal 8 because it's saying the volume is 8. So we have to think what times what times what equals 8. So 1 times 1 times 1 would not equal 8 because that's just 1. So let's try 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So the edge length, just one side of the cube, would have to be 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters would be our answer for number 5. Because 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, and that would give us a volume of 8 centimeters cubed. But 2 is our answer. Number 6, a cube has an edge length of S units. So this is kind of funny. So we have a cube, and it's saying one side is S, meaning a variable, meaning any letter. Use an exponent to write an expression for its volume. So volume is base times width times height. So if the side of the cube is S, then the height is S, and the width is S. So we just write S times S times S, but we want to use an exponent. So we have 1, 2, 3 S's multiplied together. So S times S times S is the same as S to the third power. So for the volume, I could write S to the third power, and that would be the answer. So it's kind of a different way of thinking about these same questions that we already know, but just written in a slightly different way. So remember, exponents are those little numbers. It tells us how many times we multiply the base by itself. Cubed is when we put that little 3. Cubed has to deal with a volume, 3 dimensions, so like how much stuff fits inside an area. And then squared is when we are talking about the area. Area is always squared, and volume is always cubed. So those are the differences. So let's move on to activity 3, and then you can do the cool down. So activity 3, it says a cube has an edge length of 5 inches. So I have a cube here, so I'm going to write 5 just so I can kind of visualize. Draw a net for the cube and label its sides with measurements. So I know the net of a cube is going to have 5 squares. So I'm going to draw my net like this. You can draw it a different way. Pretend these are all squares. They kind of look like rectangles, but they're squares. Okay, and I just need to label the dimensions. So I could just label one of the squares as 5 and the other as 5. And then I know every single side is 5 if it's a cube. And I guess I'll label it inches. Okay, so that's what it's talking about for the net. B says, what is the area of each face? So for one face of the cube, if it's 5 times 5, then I do 5 times 5 equals 25. So one square on the cube would be 25 square inches. what is the surface area? So if 1 is 25, all 6 of them have an area of 25 square inches. So really, we're just going to multiply one area, 25, times 6, because there's 6 squares. So 25 times 6, 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. So it would be 150 square inches. And then D, what is the volume of the cube? So the volume, if one side is 5, then the other side is 5, then the other side is 5. In volume, we multiply the 3 dimensions, base times width times height. So 5 times 5 times 5. So I'm going to do 5 times 5, which is 25, and 25 times 5. And 25 times 5 I know is 125. And in this case, I'm going to write inches cubed, because volume is cubed. Okay, last one. So now this one is doing the same type of thing, but we're going to use a variable, x. A cube has an edge length of x. So if the base is x, that means the height is x. We don't know what x is, so we're just going to keep it as x. So draw a net for the cube. It's the same as before. Here's a net. I know nets can look very different, but there should be 6 squares and label 2 of the dimensions x. Or all of the sides x is all good. Then it says write an expression for the area of each face. So I know that if I have one square and one side's x and the other side's x, that means I'm doing x times x. And x times x is x to the second power. It's x multiplied 2 times. So I'm going to say x to the second power. So x to the second power would be the area of one of the faces. Then it says write an expression for the surface area. So if one face is x to the second power, then all of them are x to the second power. So I'm going to just write 6 times x to the second power, which I could really just write as 6x squared. That would tell me the area of the surface area of all 6 of the faces. And then lastly, it says write an expression for the volume. The volume, if one side is x, then the other side is x, and the other side is x. And volume, we multiply the 3 dimensions. So x times x times x, which we will write as x to the power of 3. So that would be my volume. So hopefully you followed along. Try the cool down now and raise your hand or go to Mrs. Young to check to see if you got it right.